That's racist. Well, what do you want instead? Racial justice. What does it look like? Give me your job.
City Hall! Who's City Hall? Our City Hall!
This is what Seattle's autonomous zone looked like as protests against police brutality gripped the city. Autonomous zones are temporary protest camps, each with its own set of specific goals. The protest site sprawled 6 blocks and a city park located in the Capitol Hill neighborhood.
You know, initially it was very like education based, and there was free food and art.
It was just community. I mean, it's my understanding there weren't like a bunch of restrictions on, like, it was community org setting up and being like, hey, this is what we can provide today, or how many days they provided it.
CHOP, the Capitol Hill organized protest, was an occupation that followed a week of high tensions between Black Lives Matter protesters and the Seattle Police Department. In an effort to de-escalate the situation, Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan ordered police to abandon the East Precinct.
There was a conflict with police, and they basically like flooded that area with tear gas, and then they ceded the precinct to protesters. And then it was just kind of like this organic thing that kind of sprung up. It was a pretty like leaderless, organic occurrence.
The creation of this police-free zone was heavily criticized by Republicans and President Trump, who threatened to take it back from protesters.
And you have a governor that doesn't do a damn thing about it, and you have a mayor that doesn't know she's alive. She's talking about it's going to be a love fest this summer. No, if they don't do the job, I'll do the job.
The mostly peaceful occupation became a flashpoint in the national debate over police brutality and the funding of police departments.
You ever heard a description of racial justice? You ever heard a description of social justice? Anybody ever told you what the world's going to look like when we have that? No, because they don't know. Because what it looks like is an endless sequence of not that. And so when they take power and they screw up, not that either. And there's another revolution and somebody else takes power that's deeper in the same mindset. And when that screws up, not that either. And by the way, it screwed up because the reactionaries, the conservatives, the normal people wouldn't let us do it right. So give us more power. We have more demands.
We just got told there's another group they're meeting with there, and then they'll be moving in a few minutes, so be ready.
Somebody over there is 18 know how to use a gun? Yo, no one's gonna like fucking ask me walking in here now. Nah, just come right back here.
Hell no, bruh.
Keep the barrel down.
Hey, keep that down.
Hey, if they arrest me, you got my bond?
Somebody's saying, can I walk to Pine and 13th? Yeah, I can walk up there. I do see some, oh, shit. More shots fired. I'm running away. This has got to be the end of CHOP, in my opinion, this second shooting. I think it's pretty much over after this. This is kind of a nightmare.
Good? Are we good?
Are there any wounded? Yeah, we do have that. Just. Where are they? Yep. Yeah. Where's the driver of this? Oh my God. Holy smokes.
Look, this is also a reminder that while occupations are an important tactic, we also cannot hope to create a utopia of the CHOP. It's also showing that by itself, it will not be able to accomplish much unless it also politicizes itself to winning further demands. And that's not to imply they are not already doing that. The movement is already doing that, but that's the part of the process, figuring that out, that we have to go beyond that.
The people behind CHOP inspired others around the country to follow suit. Cities like Portland, Asheville,
The sound of a war zone echoes along Asheville's artsy street.
Philadelphia,
Is not what we want people to see of the city of Philadelphia.
and Washington, D.C.
Attempts to get closer to the White House, closer to Lafayette Park.
Our watch. Let's bring in the mayor of Seattle now. Tell you about the situation on the ground in your city, but in terms of how it looks to the rest of the country and the president teeing it up as basically ineptitude, the inability to control your own streets. Is that fair criticism?
So I know it will shock you that the president is perhaps not giving an accurate or truthful picture. We've got 4 blocks in Seattle that you just saw pictures of that is more like a block party atmosphere. It's not an armed takeover. It's not a military junta. We will make sure that we can restore this, but we have block parties and the like in this part of Seattle all the time. It's known for that. So I think the president, number one, there is no threat right now to the public.
What we've just learned is that one of the 2 victims who were brought here after the shooting early this morning has died.
Farr has mentioned, if we're going to debate this, we must understand it. What does it mean to be woke? I read the literature. I draw my definition of wokeness, or woke, which by the way is cultural appropriation. I draw my definition of the term woke from the Brazilian Marxist educator Paulo Freire, who says that the point of a thorough education is conscientization, the raising of a critical consciousness. As he phrases it, what that means is being able to recognize the structural reality of our lives. That means being able to recognize dehumanizing forms such as structural racism, sexism, cis-heteronormativity, ableism, oppression of all kinds. It also means, being able to be aware and recognize modes of what Freire called domestication, such as wearing colonizer formal wear and doing debates. Conscientization is the essence of woke, because it is the idea that you learn to see these things so that you can denounce these things, so that you can denounce them critically in order to announce the possibility of our liberation from them. What that means is that woke pursues social justice. And if we look for a definition of social justice, I draw inspiration from a different definition given by Karl Marx in 1844. He said that communism is often misunderstood. And then he went on to say, communism is the positive transcendence of private property as human self-estrangement. And I say that Karl Marx was a damned conservative because he was a privileged white European male who didn't recognize the forms of social and cultural property he benefited from, so he ignored those and focused only on material property. Therefore, social justice is the necessary extension of this idea, the positive transcendence of all forms of private property, such that we end human self-estrangement. And social justice is the consummation of something called social equity. Where Karl Marx believed in something called socialism that consummates to communism, we could define that as something like, I don't know, a administered political economy in which shares are adjusted so citizens are made equal. It just so happens that's the exact definition given in the public administration literature by George Fredrickson for social equity. And we don't even bother to take real steps towards social equity. We turn to Ibram Kendi. What does he say it takes to achieve social equity? In How to Be an Anti-Racist, on page 19, he says the only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. The only remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination. And the only remedy to racist discrimination is anti-racist discrimination. But look what's happening right now in the Supreme Court of the United States. Harvard and UNC are being challenged on their anti-racist discrimination that points toward justice. We're trying to walk back our walk towards social equity. And why? It's not a surprise. We turn to Kendi again. We haven't taken the first meaningful step towards social equity. In 2019, for Politico, Kendi wrote, in the United States at least, if we wish to have social equity, that what we need is an anti-racist amendment to our Constitution that makes unconstitutional racial inequity. We don't have that. We haven't even tried. What would it do? He said, well, it will establish a federal bureau, a bureaucracy, a Department of Anti-Racism that would have absolute authority over all state, local, federal public policies, public figures, private entities, and their officials to make sure that racist ideas and racial inequities don't surface. And it would have punitive powers to make sure that they're adjusted should those things surface. We've taken no steps toward achieving this. Now, scholars of communism, since I've invoked Karl Marx, would recognize that this is a perfect reconception of a dictatorship of the anti-racists in parallel to the dictatorship of the proletariat that Marx and Lenin perfectly clearly understood is the only way to usher people to the positive transcendence of private property as human self-estrangement, aka communism. This is what woke pursues. And it's not just that woke has not gone too far, it's that it cannot go too far. If we go and we look at Paulo Freire again, he says the point is conscientization. And what does conscientization lead to? A cultural revolution, he says. Have we had one? No. But then he warns us that after a cultural revolution, it's very likely that the new government will impose its values upon the new society. It will impose it, and so they will make them necessarily right-wing. He says that it threatens to make the new government sclerotic, bureaucratic, necrophiliac, death-loving. Everything it professes to be against, and he gives us a remedy to this problem. What Freire says is that once you have conscientization, once you have the cultural revolution, what you need is not less woke culture, but more woke culture. You need to conscientize further. You need deeper critical consciousness. You need to call out new forms of dehumanization, new modes of domestication. That's what you must do. So woke culture hasn't just not gone far enough. It cannot go far enough. We see this reflected in the queer theory literature. David Halperin and Saint Foucault wrote that the definition of queer should be that which resists all norms and social expectations. So we do praxis for queer theory, we do the work to try to bring awareness, empathy to ways of being, ways of living under the LGBT umbrella, under the queer umbrella. And what we threaten to do is to make those things normal, to establish new norms, to establish new social expectations around those modes of being, modes of living, and those police people. So they must be queer. So queer theory cannot go too far. And that's just one aspect of woke culture. We heard from Freire, woke culture cannot go too far. He says that the revolution must be perpetual. Otherwise, it becomes the status quo. So woke culture cannot possibly have gone too far or far enough. It cannot go too far. It's not possible. But that said, the point of woke culture is to make room for a socially just society. The only way to do that, under the understanding of woke, is to denounce the existing society until it no longer stands. But the existing society, hanging by a thread as it is, still exists.
Point of information.
No. Woke culture cannot go too far. Therefore, woke culture has not gone far enough. And since I am a mathematician, may I have this pleasure? Quod erat demonstrandum. Thank you.